All right, my friends, welcome back to All Cars. I am John. It's time for another Motorweek Retro review reaction, and this week it is the 1996 Honda Civic LX. Now, I am doing this one because just last week I did the 1995 Dodge and Plymouth Neon, which I owned and chose over the Honda Civic, primarily based on price and availability. But this one, I desperately respect. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Motorweek says about it when it was brand spanking new. Grab your beverage of choice, sit back with me, and let's take a trip down memory lane.
Motorweek is made possible by Lucas Oil, TireRack.com, and RockAuto.com.
A few weeks ago, we took our first brief look at the new for 1996 lineup of Honda Civics. Now we've had a chance to spend some quality time with one particular Civic. Is Honda's benchmark small car still as good as ever?
So before they move on, the previous generation was a little ovoid, right? A little smoothed out, a little non-distinctive. I didn't love it. But the previous generations, I was biased against Japanese cars. And it didn't work for me, but looking back on them, I appreciate them for their simplicity, for their tossability, for their light and airiness is what I talk about. This one kind of personifies everything that was good about Japanese cars in the 90s. I'm interested to see what they say about it overall, but I think it's handsome on the outside. I think it looks good on the inside. I think it drives really well. Let's see.
In a word, yes. But of course, small car buyers have expected excellence from Honda ever since the first Civic was sold here in 1973. And this 96 Civic LX sedan won't disappoint any of them. That's hardly a surprise because Honda extensively surveyed its dealers and the public about their likes and dislikes of the last Civic. So this Civic gets a real face, an upper grille, and taller headlights. Also a trimmer C-pillar for improved rear visibility, and overall styling that's somewhat more muscular.
And I love the styling. This to me is, quote, the Civic. You could make an argument that it was the 70s Civic that really broke into the American market, that is the Civic, right? But to me, it's this one. The styling is honestly just about perfect. I think that other small cars are still kind of cribbing off of what Honda did in the mid-90s. The bigger headlights, defined grille, good greenhouse, and this high trunk, big lights, plenty of trunk space. I don't want to say it's perfect. I really don't. But dang, for a small car without personality, right? You're not looking at a Fiat 500 here. You're not looking at a Mini. You're looking at functional and reliable. This generation Civic is just about the pinnacle, in my opinion.
The sedan is by far the most popular body style, but a coupe and hatchback are still available. The sedan grew 3 inches taller and 2.1 inches longer for 96, though the wheelbase remains at 103.2 inches. That added size helps Honda correct another perceived Civic shortcoming, a smallish interior. Both head and legroom are increased and seats are more comfortable now.
So, you know, it's funny. The I don't remember where I read it. It may have been Lee Iacocca's book, and they were talking about you survey customers, and they're always like, well, we need more elbow room, we need more leg room, and the answer is, well, we sell the next size car up. And what's happened to small cars over the years is they tend to get bigger to meet customer wants, and they end up in the next size category. I understand that people would look at the previous generation Civic and want more legroom, but it's expanded the Civic. So the Civic now is the size of the Accord back in the day. That's why they introduced the Fit below it. Nobody can argue with more space. It's welcome. And just a quick glance at the interior here. a lot of plastic, but you're building down to a price, and it's all kind of handsome. I hope they say more about it.
Plus, the cabin is far more quiet than before. Tire and engine noise are especially muted. And as always for a Honda, the engines are noteworthy. The DX and LX version of the now slightly larger 1.6-liter 16-valve single overhead cam 4-cylinder becomes the first gasoline engine to meet California's standard for low-emission vehicles. The all-aluminum unit develops 106 horsepower and 103 pound-feet of torque. Although it feels
great engine. Not superpower. The 95 Dodge that we just talked about made 130 some odd horsepower, but it wasn't nearly as smooth. The Civic, you know, at the time when I talked to people, and I was not pro Honda at the time, people talked about it was just a sewing machine. And now I look back at what a ridiculous argument that was, that something was so smooth. It was a sewing machine, and now I appreciate it. All things being equal, somebody came to me and said, here's a 96 Neon and a 96 Civic. I take the Civic without thinking about it because of the smoothness of the engine. Very, very good engine. Very good. Loved it. Not overly powerful, but really good.
Feels peppy, it still took 10.8 seconds to pull our nearly new 2,400-pound Civic sedan from 0 to 60. Widely spaced gear ratios on the standard 5-speed manual must share some of the blame. A 4-speed automatic is optional, while the HX Coupe can be ordered with a shiftless, continuously variable transmission.
Oh, I don't remember that at all. CVT back in those days, I don't remember that on a Honda. That 10.8 seconds, whatever it was, that's a little slow. That's a couple of seconds slower than the Neon was.
All Civic brakes are now disc front, drums rear. An anti-lock system is standard on EX sedans and optional on EX coupes and LX sedans like our test car. Fade-free stops from 60 averaged a reasonable 126 feet.
And again, because I just did the Neon did it in 120. So the Civic is a little bit slower, but I want to say same, no drama, right? No lockup of a wheel, no tire smoke, no nothing like that. Just a smooth, steady stop. But from those two perspectives, acceleration and braking, the Neon does better. Interesting.
Reasonable, too, is the Civic 70-decibel highway cruise and its EPA mileage ratings of 33 city and 38 highway. We averaged a fine 36 miles per gallon.
So, sorry to stop again. So, they actually registered the Neon at 65 decibels, which I do not believe. It was a rather noisy car, but 65 is a world away from the Civic the way they tested it, right? I don't believe it, but that's what the tests actually say. The Neon is far, far quieter. Now, mileage, the Neon got about 30 in mixed driving. This got about 36. That's a dramatic difference. A lot of that can be done with the horsepower, honestly, in the gearing, but much more efficient vehicle.
Inside, we found front bucket seats covered with improved quality cloth, providing better support. Controls for stereo and ventilation systems are placed higher and even better organized. A split folding rear seat is standard on all Civics. The sedan's trunk is smaller now, but still a fine 11.9 cubic feet. Honda has tried hard to keep Civic prices small, too.
Wow. Okay, so they're done looking at the interior. I expected more. Good interior. Really, really, really good interior. Very good ergonomics, right? Good gauges. It's a lot of plastic. It's a lot of plastic on the doors. It's a lot of plastic across the dashboard. But the ergonomics are great, and this is built down to a price, so we have to excuse a lot of the plastics. But it's very functional, it's very easy to use, and that trunk is quite large. The seats fold more flat than they did in that Neon I looked at recently. Very functional interior overall. So let's see the price.
The base hatchback CX lists for a low $10,360. DX sedans start at $12,630, while LX sedans start at $13,980.
And that's pretty much in line, if a little bit higher than what the Neon was. $1,000 or so relative to the Neon.
These prices represent real value, and Automobile Magazine agrees, stating, climb directly from the 95 model, already the class of the class, into the 96, and you're struck by how much more refined the new car is. And that's the 96 Civic story. A tweak here, a stitch there, and all for the best. The new Honda Civic excels in a class full of excellent cars that were all designed to match the last Civic. So it all begins again.
Great review. I wish they'd gone into more detail on some of that, especially around the interior, but fantastic car. This is, to me, the pinnacle of Civic. The modern Civics are a little low, a little swoopy. I think they're exchanging style for interior space, and yeah, I certainly think they're good. They certainly win their own awards, but I wouldn't have one. Honestly, they're low, their seats are hard, it's style over space. It's just okay. But this generation Civic is awesome. It was space over style, and I think it's styled okay. It's not ugly, it's not outstanding. The engine is not overly powerful, but it's super efficient, super smooth. Everything about it works great. Now, normally I look back and say, well, if I had the money and somebody paid me in 1996 to buy a small car, here's what I'd do. Well, I can look back and say, I was there. And what I did was buy a Neon. It was much less expensive, and importantly, the dealer was open on Sunday, but it was fun and spacious, and the interior quality was good enough, and it was a hoot to drive, but it wasn't the most reliable car. And I've always wondered how things would change if we bought a Civic and spent that little bit of extra money. The Civic represents a really good value. Don't get me wrong, it really, really does. But the Dodge was less expensive, and I think the Pontiac was less expensive at the same time. And that's what we chose. And I regret it to this day. I love that Dodge. It was so much fun. But I wonder how my life would have changed if I had had a Civic instead. Thanks for being here, guys.